Warren Macdonald back with you again with the Solution Revolution, and this time super excited to have Seth Godin joining me. Welcome, Seth.
Hey, Warren, it's good to see you. When I see people like you, I realize I have a lot of hair, so it always makes fun.
I like it. And Margot made a comment about who was going to outglow each other, or outglare each other. But wanted to do a quick introduction. I've been following your work for a while now. You just kind of gave me the heads up that it's now 15 best-selling books. Some of my favourites, Purple Cow, which we can see behind you there, Tribes, Poke the Box, which is kind of encouraging people to poke that box and do something. But I wanted to start out in my introduction because one of the things that I found interesting is people often refer to you as the world's best marketer, and I hear that and I just think that doesn't cut it for me. That might have applied in the past, but what I see your role now is kind of being of a provocateur and trying to lead the charge for us to actually create something. Is that a fair assessment, do you think?
Yeah, I think that I've never been comfortable being lumped in with people who do advertising or sell sugar water or try to manipulate stories. Yeah. The problem, of course, is inventing your own category is really tricky when you're trying to get traction. So if someone's editing a magazine and they're looking for something to call me, they pick the word marketer. And I think that my job is to redefine marketing. I think marketing isn't advertising. Marketing is the way the product works, the way we walk through the world, everything about how we interact with everyone else. That's marketing. And we see it touching politics and world affairs and nonprofits and individuals, as well as, people who make pencils or whatever.
Yeah, because we have to sell those pencils at the end of the day, and hence marketing. So here's this is. I wanted to kind of start out or continue on with this question because it's something that has intrigued me, and I figure it might intrigue you too. But part of my story is I needed to go through a pretty major crisis to head down this road that I'm on, and a lot of the people that I've interviewed for Solution Revolution have had a similar story. They went through some kind of crisis, and it activated them to some level to want to push for something better. Is that true for you? Did you have to go through some kind of crisis, or were you born activated?
Well, I think I would describe mine as more of a festering sore than the kind of cataclysmic event that you lived through that took bravery that I could only imagine. I was born with great parents, and I was born in a hurry. I was born with ADD, and I was born interested in making a ruckus. But what I didn't have for a long time was traction. Right. What I didn't have was the ability to bring my work to the world, even when I was 16 years old, in a way that the world wanted to embrace it. And so for me, it was 7 years of being nearly bankrupt. It was doing work that was hard for me to do and not having it succeed. It was 900 rejection letters in my first year as a book packager. Wow. Before I started to realize that you can't just say, idiot, look at this, it's the right answer. And so I try not to believe anymore that the problem is with the world, that the problem is with the audience, that the problem is with the reader. No, if a whole bunch of people aren't getting it, it's my problem. Yeah. And I've got to figure out how to tell my story in a way that's going to resonate with the culture as it exists.
Yeah. So you took responsibility for it by the sound of it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You run into teenagers who proudly show you all their rejection letters from college on the wall. And on one hand, those sort of battle scars are worthwhile. On the other hand, if you're getting 20 rejections from 20 colleges, that ought to tell you something about your personal marketing as much as it ought to tell you about the poor judgment of those colleges. Yeah.
Or you might be really good at perseverance. So talking about college, I wanted to touch on this latest project of yours, or the manifesto to stop stealing dreams. What prompted that?
Well, I've lived through 12 years of public school with my kids. I've been a professor at NYU. I have taught people on several continents. I've ran an MBA program in my office. So I've been thinking about education for a long time.
Yeah.
The most common question I get at my Q&A sessions is, what's your opinion about education? So I started writing a blog post about it, and the next thing I knew, it was 30,000 words long, and I said, well, this won't do.
Yeah.
It's not a blog post anymore.
Yeah.
So I thought hard about, well, if I have this manifesto, this rant about how we think about education, it's not my answer, it's my question, right? What is school for? What's the best way to bring it to the world? Well, the old way, the only way, would be to wait a year and have someone cut down a bunch of trees and put it on paper and then bully it into the bookstore and then hope that people go buy it.
Yeah.
I thought, well, if my goal is to make a point, not to make a living, how do I get this into the world? So I bought StopStealingDreams.com for $19 and posted on my Squidoo page a PDF and an ebook version and a printable version, an HTML version. Here, go take it. Yeah. And we're closing in on 500,000 readers in the last 9 days. So it's cool when you can watch an idea spread like that.
Yeah, which is interesting because it seems to me that that's something that that's been a huge driving force for you. It's not so much the transaction of selling the books, although as artists we need to do that, but the idea of spreading, or that it's about spreading an idea and starting a conversation.
Right, exactly. And I have never met an artist, never once, who said to me, too many people know my work, I'm not making a living. That never, ever, ever happens. Yeah. I think it's a false excuse that people put in there. They say, I need to keep people from seeing my work, otherwise I won't be able to make a living. What they're really saying is, I'm afraid of what they will say if I show them my work. Not, because if you trust your work enough and you realize that your enemy is obscurity, you can solve that problem on the internet for the first time ever by sharing your idea widely. If your idea is good, it's going to spread because I'm defining the word good as an idea that spreads.
Yeah. How do you see moving forward that whole concept of artists and that right at this point the best way to spread an idea is to put it out for free? Looking into the future, if we're all going to be artists, the mainstream culture, in an ideal world, you would think that we all create something, and that's kind of what I'm trying to push. But what does that really look like in reality? If we're all artists and everything's free, is that something that kind of keeps you awake at night, or that you ponder? What does that world actually look like? Because this one, obviously, in my mind, doesn't really work anymore. It's not working. We've tried it, and you speak a lot about that. But what does the next thing look like?
Yeah, well, Warren, here's an easy way to think about it. The only things that are valuable are scarce. Yeah. Right? That as soon as there's an infinite number of things, if I had a printing press here printing $20 bills by the million, the value of a $20 bill would go down to zero really fast because paper isn't worth anything. It's the scarcity. Well, so what used to be scarce was shelf space in the bookstore or wall space in the art gallery or add up whatever kind of art anybody does. That used to be scarce. Yeah. And so if you could obtain a share of it, you could sell it at a premium. In the digital world, none of those things are scarce. So if you make a video and put it online, it gets seen by 10 million people, it's not scarce. Anyone who can make a video, right? Exactly. So that's not a barrier, right? And so where is value created? Well, what's scarce is lunch with Warren. What's scarce is being first in line to be coached by somebody who can only coach one person at a time. Yeah. What's scarce is, this picture behind me by Hugh MacLeod, because Hugh physically signed it himself, right? That's scarce because he can't sign an infinite number of work. So what we end up with is this notion that the internet is like radio, but the same way radio made music famous, the internet makes ideas famous. And so your goal is to get airtime on this abundant medium, and then you make your living by selling something that's now scarce.
Yeah. So, and I get that. How does that, because you talk about the connection revolution and how it's all been connected and then ideas can spread more. But can the whole culture be pulled along by that? That's a question that often intrigues me, or where can it take us? Yeah,
it can't. The whole culture cannot be pulled along behind it. Yeah, entire industries are going to die. The music industry is almost dead. but there's more music than ever before.
Right.
So if you were looking for the guys in the limos and the cocaine and the A&R department and that whole layer,
yeah,
it's gone. We're going to mourn it. The thing is, we don't have a poetry shortage right now. Poets don't get paid, really, but there's no shortage of poetry. So what we're going to see is that this abundance is going to lead to this amateur explosion. We're not going to see $200 million movies getting made the way they used to, because there isn't enough scarcity to pay for them. And when we decide where we want them, that will create scarcity and someone will make them. But in whole sections of industries, if you're used to making $3 a word as a freelancer for magazines, you can't. I'm really sorry.
You're in trouble.
No one has written down that you are entitled to that, and it's going to go away. And if we look on what's going on in the world of blogs, 99% of them are written for free by people who aren't making a living.
Yeah.
And what we forget as capitalists is, guess what? Those people would pay to write those blogs because the act of self-expression is valuable. Yeah. So I think the most important thing, based on what I understand of your work here, is we need to stop saying this new technology, this new world owes me something,
right,
and better be what I need it to be. And we need to start saying, oh, the world is changing. What is it demanding? And can I respond to what it's demanding in a way that meets my goals?
Yeah. Do you see it as to get to that point? Do you see it as a leap of faith? Is it, because to me, the reason I ask that question is what does that future look like? Does anybody really know what it looks like? And it's almost like I feel like we're at this point where we need to step forward, and in a way I see it as a leap of faith, because sustainability wise and all of us living on this rock spinning through space, we can't really keep going the way we're going.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's two questions there, so let me try to divide them. The first one is about this leap. There's a race going on for attention.
Yeah.
And because attention is scarce. So if I think about my friend Shepard Fairey, the artist, he could have whined about the lack of gallery space. He could have whined about how difficult it was to be noticed. He could have whined about the fact that it's really hard to sell work for $50,000 a piece. Yeah. But instead, he just relentlessly gave away his work. He went to jail 30 times, putting his work up for free. And he licensed it for free to anyone who wanted it. And so for 12 years, he leaped into the void and struggled. And now an original Shepard Fairey canvas sells for $50,000 to $100,000 each, right? Wow. Well, he didn't get there in one day. He got there by leaping first. Now, if you come along and say, well, I'm going to be just like Shepard Fairey, it's too late. We already have a Shepard Fairey.
It's been done.
You got to be just like you and whatever you is. Now, the second part about the sustainability issue comes down to, in a world where ideas are worth more than stuff, actually popular ideas are worth more than stuff, what we're going to see is more and more people coming up who, instead of spending their lives trying to buy a Hummer or spending their lives trying to have a private jet, they're going to spend their lives creating ideas and spreading them. And the magic of that, for me, the optimist in me loves it, because it's about connection, not privacy, and it's about using resources like ideas, not resources like fossil fuel, and that's cool too. But I'm not a Pollyanna. I mean, I think that we are in for some significant bumps in the road, because we just can't keep burning and throwing things out the way we have been and expect that there's an infinite supply of them to come.
Yeah, no, we've got to get that. We've got to get that figured out. So, for me, from what I see, from where I sit, I think in a lot of ways it's people are fearful of moving forward into the unknown, and I've got to admit, I'll out myself here. The thing that I've loved about your work over the years is that it's, and there's a good and bad side to this, is that it's given me permission for some of the ideas that I've had that I wanted to put out there, and it's happened to me twice now that kind of 18 months down the track, I've seen somebody put an idea forward that I had 18 months prior, and that's kind of a big lesson for me. It's like, you've got to stop doing that, feel the fear and do it anyway, as the book title goes.
Yep.
But how do you deal with that? Do you just kind of go and feel that, if you're over that edge, it's too bad, the world needs this idea, and is that the world that you live in?
Well, let me see if I have it here. I do. Hold on. I'll be right back. One second.
Yeah.
Okay. So I keep this for this very reason. This cost me about $40 billion, what's inside this box.
Wow.
And the story goes like this, that in the early 1990s, I was one of the only people in the world who had an internet company.
Yeah.
And this was before the World Wide Web. I was doing online email games. I also spent most of my time and made my living writing books, not the kind of books I write now, but packaging books, clever ideas, and turning them into books.
Yeah.
Well, in 1992 or 1993, I saw the World Wide Web coming. And so because I had a hammer, and my hammer was I invented books, and I saw the World Wide Web and it was a nail, I wrote a book about what was on the web called Best of the Net. And this is the T-shirt we made for the sales force. You may recognize the logo on the back.
Yeah. Interesting.
And, so we made this T-shirt for 30 or 40 people in the sales force, and I used the $80,000 that I got paid by the publisher to write a 200-page directory of the internet.
Yeah.
For that same $80,000, two students at Stanford named Jerry and David, with the same money and the same access to the net that I had, made Yahoo.
Wow.
Which at one point was worth $80 billion.
Yeah.
So every time I say to myself, well, that's a clever idea, I look over to the T-shirt and I say, you know, the connection revolution is giving way more people access to the center of the universe. You can wait and let someone else do it, right? I mean, Groupon is based on my books, and I saw Google coming the year I worked at Yahoo. I mean, go down the list.
Yeah.
It's all there. You could go do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the only person who's keeping you from doing it, it's not me.
Yeah.
It's you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you hit right on it, and that's probably a good note to finish up on, is because part of the whole push for me doing this is that the solution is really within you. It's not outside of yourself, and based on things like acceptance and taking responsibility for moving forward. Is there any final thoughts on encouraging people to kind of step outside? I mean, there's a lot of... Actually, I'll jump back a second there and preface that, because it ties in with crisis. A friend of mine, Steve Satterwhite, is working on a book at the moment called The Skills Gap, which came about because Steve's in IT, and one of the biggest problems he has, or the industry has, is finding skilled people. There's apparently 3-5 million jobs that they need to fill, and at the same time there's 15 million people unemployed. And so what's going on? Why can't education fill these roles? And so that's become his mission, is figuring out how to fill that skills gap. So is that really what it's going to take? Is it going to take people... Sorry, part of my question was, we've got 15 million people unemployed that are apparently, I think it's fair to say, waiting for somebody to give them a job for the most part. How do we get those people to kind of take responsibility, become activated, and encourage them,
right,
without a major crisis, to come on, get in the game here? Let's take this thing forward and see what we can create on this planet.
Two key words you use: give and take. Someone will give you a job versus taking responsibility.
Yeah.
One of the things that's interesting, people like you and me talk to the public, and a lot of people in the public are thinking about it, getting around to it, circling around it, waiting for the moment. And so I would just finish this up by saying you need to write down 2 dates in your calendar: a date you're going to start and a date you're going to finish.
Yeah.
And the day you're going to start is the day that you will say, I will start acquiring the skills and the connections I need to be able to get that thing I want. You don't get to plan anymore after that day. You have to start. You can pick any day you want. It can be 7 years from now, but you have to write down that date and actually do it.
Right.
And then the finish date is, okay, how many days after I start, how many weeks after I start will I have learned what I need to know in order to say, now I'm ready to take this gig. Now I'm ready to take this opportunity. And if you don't write down the start date and you don't write down the finish date, you're not serious. You're just wasting time. And the act of writing it down and honoring that promise is the key to the whole thing.
Yeah. And hence, and you've created a great little tool to help people do that with the Ship It booklet there.
Tried, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. No, and on that note, people that want to find out more about Seth can go to sethgodin.com. I presume is the best place to steer people towards.
That'll work. And if you want Stop Stealing Dreams, go ahead and type that into Google and you'll find it.
Yeah. And as you suggest in the within Stop Stealing Dreams is please spread it. Tweet it, do whatever you need to do, shout it from the rooftops.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us, Seth, and great to connect with you again, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming next.
Well, thank you for what you do. You are a light to a lot of people, and I know sometimes it's a quiet, thankless job, but I, for one, appreciate it, so I hope you keep poking the box.
Yeah, that's my mission. Thank you. Thanks, Seth.